I'm 53 years old, and I always thought I had life all figured out, married young, raised 2 kids, kept a tidy home, and believed love was like settling into your favorite chair, predictable, comfortable, and safe. But real love, the kind that wakes up something deep inside you, I figured that was in my past. I lived in the same old routine of reheating dinners and sharing quick looks between TV commercials. Then one evening flipped everything upside down. I never dreamed something like this could happen to me. Please don't make the same mistake I did. It was a Friday evening, the kind where time feels slow and heavy. The sky outside our living room windows had turned a soft blue-gray, and a gentle rain tapped against the glass like a clock ticking away. I had just poured myself a glass of red wine, nothing special, just the cheap kind from the corner store, and I was curled up on the couch in my favorite sweater. You know, the one soft around the neck, sleeves a bit too long, the color of old cream. I had lit a single candle on the coffee table, more for company than for light. Tom, my husband, was out bowling with the guys, like he did every other Friday, right on schedule. I never minded it. In fact, I liked the quiet on those evenings. It gave me a chance to breathe in a house that always seemed busy and buzzing. That night, though, I wasn't alone for long. Around 8:30, there was a knock at the door, not rushed, not pushy, just steady. When I opened it, there stood Mark, my husband's oldest friend. Mark had always been the type of guy who caught your eye without even trying. Tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair at the sides, and those tired eyes that looked like they'd seen a lot but didn't say much. He used to come around a bunch for cookouts, birthdays, the occasional Sunday football game. But lately I hadn't seen him as much. "Tom's not home," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel I'd tucked into my waistband. "I know," he replied. "He told me. Said I could stop by and drop off that camping gear he borrowed last summer." His voice had a quiet gentleness to it that I hadn't noticed before. I stepped aside and let him in. He set the gear by the hallway table, then paused for a moment. "You mind if I sit for a bit?" he asked. I was surprised but not uncomfortable. Of course. You want a glass of wine?" He smiled a little shyly. "Only if you're having one." So we sat side by side on the couch, not touching, not too close, just 2 people sharing a quiet evening, under dim light and the soft sound of rain outside. I don't remember how the conversation started. Maybe something about the weather, then about how fast the kids had grown. Mark had a daughter who'd just gotten engaged, known her since she was 8. I congratulated him, but then the talk drifted like a boat without an anchor. He mentioned how empty his apartment felt lately, how he'd sold his record player because it reminded him of someone, how some nights the silence felt heavier than any noise. I listened, really listened, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't just hearing someone, I was feeling what they said. His shoulder was just barely brushing mine now, not on purpose. Maybe or maybe it was, but I didn't move away. There was something about the way he spoke, slow and open, that made me lean in without thinking. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told Tom in years, like how sometimes I felt invisible, how I missed being looked at like a woman, not just a wife. He turned toward me then, his voice low. "I've always seen you, Rachel." That name, my name, sounded different coming from his mouth, like it really mattered. I felt my breath catch. The room had gone quiet, like even the rain outside was holding its breath. He didn't touch me, not yet. But he looked at me in a way that felt more personal than any touch, like he was trying to remember every detail of my face. I looked down at my wine glass, suddenly aware of how warm my cheeks felt. I laughed too quickly. "Mark, don't. I mean, you shouldn't." He didn't answer right away, just leaned back slowly, like he didn't want to break the moment too hard. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I shouldn't have said that." But I shook my head. "No, I'm glad you did." We sat in silence after that, a silence so thick it buzzed between us. Nothing else happened that night. Not really. That everything had already changed. When he left, he didn't hug me, just gave me a long, searching look before stepping out into the rain. And when I closed the door, I leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest like it hadn't in years. I wasn't sure what had just started, but I knew it wasn't over. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. The sun streamed through the curtains like any other day. The coffee maker hissed and gurgled like it always did. Tom came home around 9 o'clock, grinning like a teenager who'd just bowled a perfect game. He kissed my cheek and tossed his jacket over the kitchen chair, completely unaware of the tremor still sitting behind my ribs. I smiled. I nodded in all the right places. But inside, something was shifting. All day I kept thinking about the look in Mark's eyes, that moment when the air between us got thick and heavy, like we were breathing in something we weren't supposed to. It wasn't what he said. It was how it felt. Scared me. I wasn't someone who broke the rules. I believed in vows, in loyalty, in being a good wife. I believed in quiet devotion, the kind that doesn't need applause. But something about that night had shaken a part of me I didn't know was still alive. Around lunchtime, I found myself standing at the sink, staring out the window, scrubbing a plate that had been clean for 5 minutes. My hands moved on their own, while my mind wandered to the curve of his jaw, the weight of his voice, the soft brush of his shoulder against mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tom was snoring softly beside me, the way he always did, but I was wide awake, replaying every second of that couch conversation like it was a scene from a movie I didn't want to end. Around midnight, I got up and went downstairs. The house was still, almost eerily so. I poured myself a glass of water and stood in the kitchen barefoot, letting the cold tile ground me. And then I did something foolish. Sent Mark a message. "Thank you for last night, for listening, for seeing me." I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the send button longer than it should have. Then I pressed it and felt the immediate flush of regret wash over me. I set the phone down and went back upstairs, crawling into bed beside a man who hadn't really looked at me in months. The reply came the next morning. "You deserve to be seen." I meant every word. If I crossed a line, I'm sorry, but I can't pretend I didn't feel something. I read it twice, then a third time. That day I didn't respond, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what it would mean if I said it. And yet the thought of never speaking to him again made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't ignore. 3 days passed. I buried myself in chores, errands, recipes I'd never finish. I told myself it was over, that it had just been a strange, lonely night, and we'd both come to our senses, that life has a funny way of testing the lies we tell ourselves. The following Saturday, Tom had plans to help his brother with some house repairs. He kissed me goodbye in the driveway, told me not to wait up, and drove off with a wave and a smile. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "I'm nearby. Just thought I'd check if you were around. No pressure, just missed talking to you." I stared at the screen. My heart started to thud against my ribs again. My hand trembled slightly as I typed back, "I am home." He arrived 10 minutes later. No camping gear this time. No excuse. Just Mark standing at my door again like he'd never left. He didn't come in right away. He stood on the porch, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes uncertain. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me," he said. I opened the door wider. I wasn't sure either, I answered softly. He stepped inside slowly, like he was entering something special, and in a strange way he was. We didn't sit on the couch this time. I made coffee instead, but we stood at the kitchen island. The silence between us not uncomfortable this time, just full. Heavy. Yes, but honest. After a while, he reached across the counter and took my hand. It was warm. Steady, no words, just that simple, deliberate touch. I didn't pull away. That moment, more than any other, changed something inside me. It wasn't about desire. Not entirely. It was about being understood. Being held in someone's gaze like I was still worth noticing. I realized in that quiet kitchen, with a man who wasn't my husband, holding my hand gently across a cracked marble countertop, that my heart had started to wander long before my body ever did, and I had no idea what to do about it. For days after Mark left my kitchen that afternoon, I found myself living in two different worlds. There was the world that everyone could see, Rachel, the devoted wife, making pot roast on Sundays, folding laundry with the news playing softly in the background, smiling at Tom's harmless jokes about his thinning hair and his latest fantasy football picks. Then there was the world underneath it all, a world of glances, memories, quiet moments I couldn't explain, even to myself. Mark hadn't kissed me. He hadn't said anything inappropriate, but his presence stayed with me in a way that felt louder than any touch. It haunted the edges of my day, echoed in the places Tom didn't look anymore. I thought maybe it would pass, that maybe I just needed to shake it off, get my head straight, focus on the life I built. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, I found myself waiting for a message, a sign, anything to tell me that what I felt in that kitchen wasn't one-sided, that he hadn't regretted reaching out to me or holding my hand across that chipped counter. Then, one afternoon, while I was grocery shopping, standing right there in front of the Red Apples of all places, my phone buzzed. I'm sorry if I've made this harder for you. I didn't mean to stir anything up. I just missed talking to you. I stared at the screen. My heart pounded louder than the humming fluorescent lights above me. Didn't reply right away. I finished my shopping. I loaded the bags into the trunk. I sat in the driver's seat and stared out the windshield for a long time before I finally responded. You didn't make it harder. You reminded me I'm still me. And I didn't realize how much I missed feeling like that. This time his reply came instantly. Then let me remind you again. Dinner. My treat. Somewhere quiet, no pressure. Just come as yourself. I hesitated. It was one thing to share a couch or exchange messages, but dinner, that felt different. That felt like a step I couldn't undo. But the truth was, I wanted to go. Not out of rebellion. Not because I wanted to hurt Tom. But because for the first time in years, someone saw through the layers of routine and asked to meet me. Not the version I showed the world, but the woman beneath it all. So I said yes. We met at a small Italian place tucked into a quiet corner of town, dim lighting. Real candles, the kind of place people choose for heart-to-heart talks, not big news. When I walked in, he stood up immediately. He looked nervous. I probably did, too. But then I saw his eyes soften, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The dinner itself was gentle, honest. We didn't flirt. We didn't cross lines. We just talked about the lives we thought we'd have, the roads we never took, the people we once were. At one point, over a second glass of wine, he reached across the table and touched my wrist lightly. You carry so much, he said softly. I see it in your eyes, but you don't have to. That nearly undid me. No one had said something like that to me in years, maybe ever. After dinner, we didn't linger. He walked me to my car, hands in his pockets, Again. The wind tugged at my scarf, and for a moment, I let myself imagine leaning into him just to feel how safe his arms might be. But IDN single quotes, T. Instead, I turned to him and said, I don't know what this is, Mark, or what it means. He nodded, eyes steady on mine. Neither do I, but I know it's real. And I know I'd rather face the confusion with you than keep pretending it's not there. He didn't ask to come home with me. He didn't need to, because what passed between us was already far more intimate than anything physical. That night, I drove, home with tears in my eyes and 1,000 questions swirling in my chest. But for the first time in years, I also felt awake and terrified, because I knew I was standing at a crossroads. And no matter which direction I chose, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after dinner with Mark, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror longer than usual. I looked at myself, not just at the lines etched into my skin or the soft wear of time around my eyes, but at the woman inside them. The woman I had forgotten. The woman I had buried beneath years of compromise, routine and silent ache. Tom was downstairs sipping his coffee and scrolling through his phone, the same morning ritual for almost 20 years. He didn't look up when I walked into the kitchen, didn't notice the red in my eyes or the way my hands trembled slightly as I reached for a mug. But how could he? I had become so good at hiding the parts of me that longed for something more. We sat in silence, broken only by the occasional clink of his spoon against his cup. I wanted to speak, to say something that might start to peel back the walls between us, but the words caught somewhere between guilt and fear. Later that day, Mark sent me one final message. Don't want to be the reason you're in pain. You don't owe me anything, Rachel, but I hope you know now what you're worth. I hope someone shows you every day. And just like that, he let go. No pressure, just honesty. I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I cared more than I knew how to say. Over the next few weeks, I pulled back from him, not because the connection had faded, but because the weight of it had grown too real. It made me look at my marriage with different eyes. It made me ask hard questions. And the hardest question of all was this. If I had felt truly seen, truly loved, would I have ever let Mark in at all? The answer shook me. So one evening after dinner, I turned off the television and sat across from Tom. He looked at me surprised. We need to talk, I said. It wasn't a dramatic confession. I didn't throw accusations or tears. I just told him the truth about how lonely I had felt, about the distance between us, about how I had let another man remind me that I was still alive, still visible, still worthy of something more than polite silence. I didn't tell him everything, not the dinner, not the messages, but I told him enough to see the pain rise in his face like a slow tide. And for once, he didn't get defensive. Didn't storm out or call me names. He just sat there, quiet, and said, I didn't know you felt that way. I nodded. That's the problem. You didn't know. And I stopped trying to tell you. We spent hours that night unraveling the threads of who we had become. And it wasn't easy. Parts of it hurt. But in that pain, there was also something honest. Something necessary. We didn't fix everything overnight. Life doesn't work like that. But something cracked open between. Use a space where truth could breathe. As for Mark, I never saw him again. Not in person anyway. He left something in me I'll never quite be able to explain. Not regret. Not sorrow. Something closer to awakening. He reminded me that love isn't just duty or years spent together. It's attention. It's presence. It's being seen. And maybe that was the lesson I needed all along, to remember that I am not invisible. That I am not done growing, that no matter how old we get, we still deserve to be chosen. Not just once, but every day. So if you've ever found yourself staring at the ceiling in the quiet dark, wondering if there's more to your story, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me. There is. But sometimes it starts with being honest with yourself about how much you've settled and how much more you still deserve.